Chapter 5, Part 2 of Agriculture for Beginners. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Agriculture for Beginners by Charles William Burkett. Chapter 5, Part 2, Horticulture. Section 26. Flower gardening. The comforts and joys of life depend largely upon small things. Of these small things, perhaps none holds a position of greater importance in country life than the adornment of the home, indoors and outdoors, with flowers tastefully arranged. Their selection and planting furnish pleasant recreation, their care is a pleasing employment, and each little plant, as it sprouts and grows and develops, may become as much a pet as creatures of the sister animal kingdom. A beautiful, well-kept yard adds greatly to the pleasure and attractiveness of a country home. If a beautiful yard and home give joy to the mere passer-by, how much more must their beauty appeal to the owners? The decorating of the house shows ambition, pride, and energy, important elements in a successful life. Plant trees and shrubs in your yard and border your masses of shrubbery with flower beds. Do not disfigure a lawn by placing a bed of flowers in it. Use the flowers rather to decorate the shrubbery and for borders along walks, and in the corners near steps or against foundations. If you wish to raise flowers for the sake of flowers, not as decorations, make the flower beds in the backyard or at the side of the house. Plants may be grown from seeds or from bulbs or from cuttings. The rooting of cuttings is an interesting task to all who are fond of flowers. Those who have no greenhouse and who wish to root cuttings of geraniums, roses, and other plants may do so in the following way. Take a shallow pan, an old-fashioned milk pan for instance, fill it nearly full of clean sand, and then wet the sand thoroughly. Stick the cuttings thickly into this wet sand, set the pan in a warm sunny window, and keep the sand in the same water-soaked condition. Most cuttings will root well in a few weeks, and may then be set into small flower pots. Cuttings of tea roses should have 2 or 3 joints, and be taken from a stem that has just made a flower. Allow one of the rose leaves to remain at the top of the cutting. Stick this cutting into the sand, and it will root in about 4 weeks. Cuttings of Cape jasmine may be rooted in the same way. Some geraniums, the rose geranium for example, may be grown from cuttings of the roots. Bulbs are simply the lower ends of the leaves of a plant wrapped tightly around one another and enclosing the bud that makes the future flower stalk. The hyacinth, the narcissus, and the common garden onion are examples of bulbous plants. The flat part at the bottom of the bulb is the stem of the plant reduced to a flat disc, and between each 2 adjacent leaves on this flat stem there is a bud, just as above ground there is a bud at the base of a leaf. These buds on the stem of the bulb rarely grow, however, unless forced to do so artificially. The number of bulbs may be greatly increased by making these buds grow and form other bulbs. In increasing hyacinths, the matured bulbs are dug in the spring, and the under part of the flat stem is carefully scraped away to expose the base of the buds. The bulbs are then put in heaps and covered with sand. In a few weeks each bud has formed a little bulb. The gardener plants the whole together to grow 1 season, after which the little bulbs are separated and grown into full-size bulbs for sale. Other bulbs, like the narcissus or the daffodil, form new bulbs that separate without being scraped. There are some other plants which have underground parts that are commonly called bulbs, but which are not bulbs at all. For example, the gladiolus and the caladium, or elephant's ear. Their underground parts are bulb-like in shape, but are really solid, flattened stems with eyes like the underground stem of the Irish potato. These parts are called corms. They may be cut into pieces like the potato, and each part will grow. The dahlia makes a mass of roots that look greatly like sweet potatoes, but there are no eyes on them as there are on the sweet potato. The only eyes are on the base of the stem to which they are joined. They may be sprouted like sweet potatoes, and then soft cuttings made of the green shoots, after which they may be rooted in the greenhouse and later planted in pots. There are many perennial plants that will bloom the first season when grown from the seed, though such seedlings are seldom so good as the plants from which they came. They are generally used to originate new varieties. Seeds of the dahlia, for instance, can be sowed in a box in a warm room in early March, potted as soon as the plants are large enough to handle, and finally planted in the garden when the weather is warm. They will bloom nearly as soon as plants grown by dividing the roots or from cuttings. In growing annual plants from seed, there is little difficulty if the grower has a greenhouse or a hotbed with a glass sash. Even without these, the plants may be grown in shallow boxes in a warm room. The best boxes are about 4 inches deep, with bottoms made of slats nailed 1/4 of an inch apart to give proper drainage. Some moss is laid over the bottom to prevent the soil from sifting through. The boxes should then be filled with light, rich soil. Fine black forest mold, thoroughly mixed with 1/4 its bulk of well-rotted manure, makes the best soil for filling the seed boxes. If this soil be placed in an oven and heated very hot, the heat will destroy many weeds that would otherwise give trouble. After the soil is put in the boxes, it should be well packed by pressing it with a flat wooden block. Sow the seeds in straight rows, and at the ends of the rows put little wooden labels with the names of the flowers on them. Seeds sowed in the same box should be of the same general size, in order that they may be properly covered, for seeds need to be covered according to their size. After sowing the seed, sift the fine soil over the surface of the box. The best soil for covering small seeds is made by rubbing dry moss and leaf mold through a sieve together. This makes a light cover that will not bake and will retain moisture. After covering the seeds, press the soil firm and smooth with a wooden block. Now sprinkle the covering soil lightly with a watering pot until it is fairly moistened. Lay some panes of glass over the box to retain the moisture and avoid further watering until moisture becomes absolutely necessary. Too much watering makes the soil too compact and rots the seed. As soon as the seedlings have made a second pair of leaves, take them up with the point of a knife and transplant them into other boxes filled in the same way. They should be set 2 inches apart so as to give them room to grow strong. They may be transplanted from the boxes to the flower garden by taking an old knife blade and cutting the earth into squares, and then lifting the entire square with the plant and setting it where it is wanted. There are many flower seeds which are so small that they must not be covered at all. In this class we find begonias, petunias, and Chinese primroses. To sow these, prepare boxes as for the other seeds and press the earth smooth. Then scatter some fine dry moss thinly over the surface of the soil. Sprinkle this with water until it is well moistened, and at once scatter the seeds thinly over the surface and cover the boxes with panes of glass until the seeds germinate. Transplant as soon as the young plants can be lifted out separately on the blade of a penknife. Many kinds of flower seeds may be sowed directly in the open ground, where they are to remain. The sweet pea is one of the most popular flowers grown in this way. The seeds should be sowed rather thickly in rows and covered fully 4 inches deep. The sowing should be varied in time according to the climate. From North Carolina southward, sweet peas may be sowed in the fall or in January, as they are very hardy and should be forced to bloom before the weather becomes hot. Late spring sowing will not give fine flowers in the South. From North Carolina northward, the seed should be sowed just as early in the spring as the ground can be easily worked. When the plants appear, stakes should be set along the rows and a strip of woven wire fence stretched for the plants to climb on. Morning glory seeds are also sowed where they are to grow. The seeds of the moonflower are large and hard and will fail to grow unless they are slightly cut. To start their growth, make a slight cut just through the hard outer coat of the seed so as to expose the white inside. In this way they will grow very readily. The seeds of the canna or Indian shot plant are treated in a similar way to start them growing. The canna makes large fleshy roots which in the North are taken up, covered with damp moss, and stored under the benches of the greenhouse or in a cellar. If allowed to get too dry, they will wither. From central North Carolina south, it is best to cover them up thickly with dead leaves, and let them stay in the ground where they grew. In the early spring take them up and divide for replanting. Perennial plants, such as our flowering shrubs, are grown from cuttings of the ripe wood after the leaves have fallen in autumn. From North Carolina southward, these cuttings should be set in rows in the fall. Cuttings 10 inches long are set so that the tops are just even with the ground. A light cover of pine leaves will prevent damage from frost. Farther north the cuttings should be tied in bundles and well buried in the ground with earth heaped over them. In the spring, set them in rows for rooting. In the South, all the hardy hybrid perpetual roses can be grown in this way, and in any section the cuttings of most of the spring flowering shrubs will grow in the same manner. The Japanese quince, which makes such a show of its scarlet flowers in early spring, can be best grown from 3-inch cuttings made of the roots and planted in rows in the fall. Many of our ornamental evergreen trees, such as the arbor vitae, can be grown in the spring from seeds sowed in a frame. Cotton cloth should be stretched over the trees while they are young, to prevent the sun from scorching them. When a year old they may be set in nursery rows to develop until they are large enough to plant. Arbor vitae may also be grown from cuttings made by setting young tips in boxes of sand in the fall and keeping them warm and moist through the winter. Most of them will be rooted by spring. The kinds of flowers that you can grow are almost countless. You can hardly make a mistake in selecting, as all are interesting. Start this year with a few, and gradually increase the number under your care year by year, and aim always to make your plants the choicest of their kind. Of annuals there are over 400 kinds cultivated. You may select from the following list: phlox, petunias, China asters, California poppies, sweet peas, pinks, double and single sunflowers, hibiscus, candy tuft, balsams, morning glories, stocks, nasturtiums, verbenas, mignonette. Of perennials, select bleeding hearts, pinks, bluebells, hollyhocks, perennial phlox, perennial hibiscus, wild asters, and goldenrods. From bulbs, choose crocus, tulip, daffodil, narcissus, lily of the valley, and lily. Some climbers are cobia, honeysuckle, Virginia creeper, English ivy, Boston ivy, cypress vine, hyacinth bean, climbing nasturtiums, and roses. To make your plants do best, cultivate them carefully. Allow no weeds to grow among them, and do not let the surface of the soil dry into a hard crust. Beware, however, of stirring the soil too deep. Loosening the soil about the roots interrupts the feeding of the plant and does harm. Climbing plants may be trained to advantage on low woven wire fences. These are especially serviceable for sweet peas and climbing nasturtiums. Do not let the plants go to seed, since seeding is a heavy drain on nourishment. Moreover, the plant has served its end when it seeds, and is ready then to stop blossoming. You should therefore pick off the old flowers to prevent their developing seeds. This will cause many plants which would otherwise soon stop blossoming to continue bearing flowers for a longer period. Window gardening. Growing plants indoors in the window possesses many of the attractions of outdoor flower gardening, and is a means of beautifying the room at very small expense. Especially do window gardens give delight during the barren winter time. They are a source of culture and pleasure to thousands who cannot afford extended and expensive ornamentation. The window garden may vary in size from an eggshell holding a minute plant to boxes filling all the available space about the window. The soil may be in pots for individual plants or groups of plants, or in boxes for collections of plants. You may raise your flowers inside of the window on shelves or stands, or you may have a set of shelves built outside of the window and enclosed in glazed sashes. The illustration on page 119 gives an idea of such an external window garden. The soil must be rich and loose. The best contains some undecayed organic matter, such as leaf mold or partly decayed sods and some sand. Raise your plants from bulbs, cuttings, or seed, just as in outdoor gardens. Some plants do better in cool rooms, others in a warmer temperature. If the temperature ranges from 35 degrees to 70 degrees, averaging about 55 degrees, azaleas, daisies, carnations, candy tuft, alyssum, dusty miller, chrysanthemums, cinerarias, camellias, daphnes, geraniums, petunias, violets, primroses, and verbenas make especially good growths. If the temperature is from 50 degrees to 90 degrees, averaging 70 degrees, try abutilon, begonia, bouvardia, caladium, canna, Cape jasmine, coleus, fuchsia, gloxinia, heliotrope, lantana, lobelia, roses, and smilax. If your box or window is shaded a good part of the time, raise begonias, camellias, ferns, and asparagus springieri. When the soil is dry, water it. Then apply no more water until it again becomes dry. Beware of too much water. The plants should be washed occasionally with soap suds and then rinsed. If red spiders are present, sponge them off with water as hot as can be borne comfortably by the hand. Newspapers afford a good means of keeping off the cold. End of Chapter 5, Part 2.